Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal for the second time today. Thank you for joining me on what's been a pretty disappointing Thursday. And as you can see, I'm joined by James Benge of CBS, as always, for Inside Arsenal. Extra time, James. I hope you are well, mate. It's not the best of mornings to be, mornings. Sorry, best of days to be an Arsenal fan after that last night. But yeah, how are you, football aside?
Yeah, I didn't even get to record with you on Monday, did I? I bet that was more fun.
Yeah, Monday was definitely a more uplifting day than today. The highs of lows of football, how things can change in a short matter of time. You had the highs of Man City. Then Monday was Arsenal aren't signing anyone. Mood starts to crash,
Yeah.
and then absolutely hammered in the Carabao Cup semi-final. Mood definitely crashes even further. So yeah, the highs and lows of football.
And it's as if it can get any worse as well. Those lot are going off on holiday. They don't deserve a holiday. I
I know,
deserve a holiday.
flying off to Dubai. I've seen lots of people saying, "Oh, I shouldn't reward them for failure." It's like, I don't know. It's a little bit different than that, to be honest. If we want them to do well in the second half of the season, then maybe this is absolutely what they need. And I don't think it's really rewarding them with failure, to be honest. They are going to be working over there, and hopefully for the long term, it's so we get the benefits that we saw last season, and we see a very different Arsenal when they return. But yeah, it was a tough night last night, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, I think over the course of the two legs, Arsenal can sort of look back on a lot of moments and say, I mean, a 4-0 aggregate scoreline kind of in no way reflects the 180 minutes, but I still thought last night Newcastle were fantastic. They got everything right. I thought the tactics were spot on because I know when I saw those lineups, I thought 5-4-1 is how just going to sit those two banks in front of the keeper, and I think that would be great for Arsenal if that happened. But he didn't do anything like that. They pressed really well and aggressively with that front five. I thought they defended excellently. I know I'm sure there are a lot of Arsenal fans that found several of the, Bruno Guimaraes Jacksons or some of the things that some of the other players were doing and how long Dubravka took over goal kicks infuriating. But you know what? Like, they were winning 2-0. It's their right to play the game that way. And then I thought, I mean, honestly, I came out of that game thinking, is Alexander Isak the best striker in the world? Probably don't quite think that, but I think it's sort of, if this was inside Newcastle extra time, I think we could do a whole show on whether he is the best striker in the world. Phenomenal. I don't think there was anything wrong with Saliba either. I think Saliba and then the rest of the back line just got intimidated by Isak. It's brilliant.
He was unbelievable in that first half. It was the Isak semi-final, wasn't it? It was the story of him over both legs. He won that game for Newcastle. He did it in the first leg, the goal and the assist. And yesterday he was just that first half. He set the tone. Unbelievable forward display. And yeah, I've not seen Saliba look as unsettled as that before. I remember I always think back, and I've mentioned it to you a lot of times, haven't I? That Ivan Toney game in the 1-1 when they forgot to draw the lines at the Emirates. It's the only other time I've seen Saliba really ruffled and unsettled by a forward. But Isak last night was just incredible. I mean, he was a difference, and he was so. I mean, that goal, the disallowed goal, the finish, wow, it was absolutely brutal, wasn't it? It was just foot through it, no chance for Raya. And although he just strayed a fraction offside, that just kind of set the tone, didn't it? I think they were on it. They were on it from the start. Look, Arsenal lost the game at the Emirates. The first leg was where they lost a tie. Definitely, it was always going to be a really difficult tie. Exactly how yesterday panned out, I was expecting it to pan out. I have to admit, it was exactly what I thought was going to happen. It was going to be so hostile, so noisy, and it was going to be really, really difficult for Arsenal. I thought the first goal was obviously crucial, and is that cliche thing to say, but it absolutely wasn't. Had Odegaard scored that, it would have been interesting at least to see how things unfolded after that. But that 1 minute of play of Arsenal hit the post at one end from a big chance and miss, Newcastle go down the other end within a minute, hit the post, or actually hit the post twice, didn't they? Because Isak's shot at the post, but then Murphy's hit the inside of the post and went in, and it was game over. The second Newcastle went in front, it was game over. And it would have been interesting. What do you reckon would have happened? It's tough, isn't it, to say, but if Odegaard had scored that goal and Arsenal got the lead, could you have seen a dramatic shift in how things panned out, or do you think even if Arsenal got in front, Newcastle would have just been too strong on the night?
I do think I think the 1-goal lead that they'd have had on aggregate would have kind of brought Newcastle to a space where even if their manager didn't want to, they would have just dropped a bit and defended a bit. I think if Arsenal had got in at half-time at 1-0, we would have seen just 45 of the most attritional attack versus defence drills, with Newcastle taking forever over everything. And I think then Arsenal might have taken it to extra time. I don't ever really think, exactly like you said, didn't really see much of a chance of them winning this tie beyond sort of late in extra time or on penalties. I think that was always how it was going to play out if it played in Arsenal's favour. But I mean, also the way that 19th minute went, I think just killed everything within Arsenal. And I think I wouldn't say gave up, but I think they just sort of knew the fight was beyond them. And so they grew incredibly frustrated and incredibly bitter. I mean, you mentioned the goal there. What I loved about Isak was the way in. You mentioned the goal that wasn't the offside goal. What I loved about the goal that was scored was the way that he just refused to play Saliba like Saliba wanted to be played. So Saliba comes up for the duel and Isak just drops around and sticks the left foot out to whip it around him. It's such smart centre forward play. And I think, part of me also thinks Isak, when he was playing as well as he was, would have got a shot or a goal or done something to create a goal. So I think even if the ball had been sort of spinning more favourably for Ødegaard and had gone in the bottom corner, I think it was still a long shot for Arsenal.
Yeah. I was looking at the stats of the two legs, and it's mad when you sort of add them together. I'm going to get blinded by the sun now, which has just come out, by the way. You can probably see it on the screen. When you sort of marry the two games together, and the stats are amazing in terms of shots. Arsenal had double the amount of shots to Newcastle. I think it's 34-17. XG was 4.4 to Arsenal to 2 something to Newcastle. They were dominant in so many areas in terms of the match actions, but I just still think Newcastle were absolutely deserved to win that game. Not as comfortably as they did over the two legs, but they deserved to win that tie. They were just better in both boxes. Because I think, obviously there's been lots of talk about Arsenal's attack, hasn't there? And the fact they didn't score obviously didn't help over the two legs. But I do think defensively, in both ties, they look very, very edgy. And I think that was just mainly because of Isak, and he just unsettled them so much. I was surprised by how open they were yesterday, because I don't know if they got a bit mixed up in their head about how they should play the game, but it was so easy for Newcastle to break and get at them and run into space. And I don't think Arsenal needed to do that. I'd have been quite happy with 0-0 at half-time yesterday. And because you still get a goal early in the second half, there's loads of minutes to play, and then the edginess comes into it. But they were so open and easy to attack against that a goal felt inevitable in that first half. And, once Newcastle scored, it was tie over. I don't know if they got caught up in a bit of like, we've got to score, we've got to get back in this game. But I don't think that was really the right game plan, given the danger and the threat that Newcastle possess on the counter. I thought the defence would look very, very surprisingly ragged.
And I did think completely right, and I thought that the space sort of ahead of them, there was so much that the defence had to do to get it out and to the feet of the midfielders. I thought you could see the best moment that Arsenal had in the whole game was when Ødegaard started dropping deep and doing the conducting. But kind of where was Rice in that game? Partey, I thought, was a shadow of the player he'd been against City. And I do think there's a fair question about whether you can get the level of Partey performance you got on Sunday 2 or 3 times in a week. I would have loved to have seen Jorginho play this game as well. He's had some really good games against Newcastle, home and away. I think you are right that to an extent they just were a bit too aggressive in terms of their positioning of that front six early on. They were really pushing for the early goal, and I understand the impetus because the crowd is there and the crowd is getting on your back, and you think we need to shut them up. That's our first job. But I think just making the tie a bit more boring, like you say, and dragging it to the 45th minute and it's 0-0, that would have shut them up as well. I thought that the players slightly mismanaged the moment, and I think that would be a bit of a worry because we've seen these things come up with Arteta in two-legged ties before, and the sample size is still small. And I think if he does so well in the league, why would that not translate to the Champions League and the EFL Cup semi-finals? But they got to get it right, and they've got to get a better way of overcoming first leg deficits maybe in the next few weeks, because for me, it's Champions League or bust now.
as you're talking about that, I thought I'd bring this up because I was going to save this for later, but this kind of follows on for it. It's from Amari. Says, do you worry that our team doesn't have the capacity to win when the pressure is really on? Putting last night aside, we lost the tie in the first leg when the pressure was on. Similarly, in the run at the end of 2022-23, last season we got to the top of the league at Christmas and went on a run of poor results, which essentially cost us the league. And they lost to Villa. The buying games in the Champions League last year were the same. And I had another couple of questions on the sort of two-legged ties and that sort of thing. And obviously, like you said, I mean, this is going to be crucial to Arsenal in terms of their Champions League hopes. They've got to get the best of these two-legged ties. So, why do you think it is? Maybe, I mean, maybe it's a bit too simplistic because, I mean, Porto, they were under incredible pressure last season against Porto. You know, they'd lost the first leg and they had to turn that around and win that in the second leg, and they managed it. Is it, when I look at the sort of the big games, you know, knockout games recently, Bayern, is it as simple as just saying the away leg was second? You know, if Arsenal were at home in the second leg, would that have really helped them, do you think? Do you think they've been a bit unlucky?
No, I do think there's something about... I don't agree with the question about win when the pressure's on. They beat Liverpool 3-1 the Emirates when the title... When everyone felt like, and they would have felt like the title race was over if they didn't win. They've beaten City. They've drawn with City at the Etihad. They've got good results in the league.
Well, they haven't lost to a top six side in like 17 games, have they? So they, those are big pressure games, and they haven't lost in any of those in the Premier League.
And every game after the Villa game was an enormously high pressure game, and they won them all. I think, didn't they?
Yeah,
they did.
Yeah, they did.
But I do think there's something about two-legged football that I think you just have to get your head round as young footballers. You remember the Porto game? Gabby Martinelli goes steaming up the pitch in the 95th minute, and it's 0-0. Mate, 0-0 in Porto, great result, perfect, excellent. And they give the ball away and Porto score. I thought too, the Bayern one...
The Bayern one was very tight, the 2-2.
Weird things happened, yeah.
They were very unlucky on the day at the home game. They could have easily won that game. They missed a big chance to go 2-0 up. I still think they should have had a penalty in the last minute when Saka went down around Neuer. They could have easily won that game. I think that was, I don't think they were awful at all in that first leg.
But I mean, I think to an extent, it's really just experience, isn't it? I think a lot of this team have not played many high stakes, two-legged. I don't count the Europa League because most people at Arsenal don't. So they've not played like a lot of high stakes European games that really matter and two-legged games. And I think there is a little something to just understanding in your head that it's half time at the tie. And that in the same way you would probably be a bit safe. You play it a bit safe, and at half time in a normal game, you just can't be chasing a last minute winner in the first leg. So it feels to me like there's something, and I think we didn't really see that until the early exchanges at St James's Park, but I think they need to adapt to it. You can only do so with experience, can't you? It took City forever. That's what happens with these younger teams. It takes them a long time to learn.
Well, the team have now jetted off to Dubai, as we sort of mentioned earlier on. I see some pictures there. Bukayo Saka making the trip.
Look at Ben White.
Ben White, already in his t-shirt. He's already ready. He's not even got his top on. He's ready to hit those rays as soon as he steps off the plane later on. So
when you go on holiday, this big question, people like it when we go off topic. Are you a Ben White that you dress for where you're landing, or are you, Gabby and Bukayo wrapped up for the warm of the cold of the airport?
I'm not so much wrapped up for the cold of the airport. I'm just comfort. I am in, I live in hoodies anyway. I love hoodie. It just makes me feel very safe when I can pull my hood up, and it makes me feel very warm as well. So I pretty much always travel in a hoodie and tracksuit bottoms, especially if it's long haul. I'm not sitting there in shorts and t-shirts.
I'm pure Ben White.
In the sun.
I'm dressed to go straight to the beach when I land.
I've done that so many times though, and then the air conditioning in the plane kicks in, and I'm sitting there absolutely freezing. So no, I'm more Bukayo than I am Ben White. It's good to see Bukayo heading over there. I wasn't sure if he was going to go or not. I fully expected Ben White was going to be going because I know that he's very, very close, but I wasn't sure if Bukayo's going. I suppose last season he took a couple of the injured players last year. Who was it who was out last year around Dubai, and then like Fabio Vieira and people like that went, didn't they, when they'd been out? So I suppose that makes sense. It's great. It was good seeing Bukayo on pitch side against City, and can't really take much from how he looks in those images. But he was bouncing around, he was happy, he was joining in the celebrations. He's walking normally there to the plane. It kind of just it's tantalizing, isn't it? It's just like, oh God, how far away is he from being fit? They're never going to tell us because they're never going to want to put any pressure on a time frame or anything like that. But it is nice to see him there, isn't it? And sort of just around the players again.
Nice to have him as a sort of lurking surprise. I mean, we're still a way off, but I think it's really interesting the way that in the pre-match presser for Newcastle, Arteta was just asked like a straight question, the sort you would naturally ask about. You'd ask Arne Slot about Salah if he was out for 2 months. When it's been 3 or 4 weeks, you might just say, "How's recovery going?" And that's what Arteta was at, and he just refused to engage on it.
Yeah, he wasn't having any of
it. I mean, what's so fascinating about this is it could be anything from like he misses 2 or 3 the sort of 2 or 3, 4, 5 games that separate Arsenal from the international break, or he could not be back till mid-April.
Yeah,
it's intriguing how they manage that, but I mean, obviously, I think having them out there speaks to just the sheer value of this camp for the squad harmony, which we see is just so strong. These guys enjoying spending time with each other, enjoying celebrating everyone's accomplishments, no matter the opprobrium that comes their way.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the fixture list. Once they get back, obviously it starts with Leicester on the 15th, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
7,
games.
I think. Oh, is it 5?
It's
plus the 2 Champions League games.
Yeah. Sorry, it'll be 7 with the 2 Champions League. They're not included on there, so it'll be 7 before they come back after the international break, which is the 1st of April when they play Fulham at home. It kind of, that Fulham game is the one you probably look at, isn't it, and think that's the one, because even if he does get close to fitness, you've got to ease him back in after a sort of what he's been through in the hamstring and the operation, everything like that. It's not like, when Martin Odegaard just rocked up at Chelsea away and started after all that time out. I can't see that happening with Saka. He's going to have to be sort of drip fed into the team a little bit more. So yeah, I sort of look at that Fulham game as potentially the one. I mean, Ben White, how big a boost do you think it's going to be to have Ben White back after the break? Because Timber's been great and everything, but just having White back, having that option of being able to sort of change the two as well. And I bet you Martin Odegaard can't wait for Ben White to be back.
He's been so missed. I mean, and right the way down to as well, like last night, William Saliba looked like a player that could have done with a rest. And yeah, you wouldn't have rested him in this game anyway. But just having sort of the option to play Ben White at right centre-back or Timber at right centre-back, huge boost. Fantastic player that I think has been sort of, his absence has been really understated beyond Arsenal circles. You have to go all the way. I think since the start of August, you've had the quartet of Rice, Saka, White, and Odegaard have played just one Premier League game together, which I think was the one against Chelsea when Odegaard was obviously injured and playing back through the injury. The overlapping, the tactical acuteness. Everyone that watches this will know I'm sort of fallen head over heels for Jurrien Timber, the footballer, and I don't know how you sort of drop Jurrien Timber from the starting 11, but Ben White is magnificent, and I think especially when Saka's back, that triumvirate makes for the most dangerous flank. Him, Odegaard, Saka. I think it's going to be pretty unstoppable for teams, and I think it's quite arguably a big part of why Arsenal's attack hasn't been quite what it was last season. Is you're missing those overlapping runs from White that just add that bit more difficulty for defenders.
I don't think it's arguable. I think it's fact. I think it's just fact. Absolutely. There's just, like you said, the overlapping runs, but also just the understanding of the three of them that makes that right side so dangerous. I think he's been a huge miss, and that's nothing against Timber, who I think has been fantastic and is fantastic. But it's just going to be nice to have the option of resting one week, playing one the other week. You could then, like you said, if Saliba needs a rest, you can move Timber inside, play him alongside Gabriel, and give him some time off. Because someone pointed out earlier this morning to me that he started every single Premier League game last season. This season he's missed 1.5. One of those was he got sent off halfway through the Bournemouth game, and the other one there was one match he missed, and that's it. He's played so much football, William Saliba, and and having White back will certainly allow potentially them to have a bit of a breather. What did you make of obviously Gabriel Martinelli got injured last night? Again, I'm just taking this from a photo, but that's quite a positive sign, I think, because I wasn't sure when he first went down. I was just like, well, surely that's probably going to be him out of Dubai, because Mikel said he's having an MRI scan today afterwards. And I was like, oh, surely he's going to end up, just fresh from that injury. If he just had it, surely he'll, you won't want to sit on a plane for 8 hours or whatever it is and all that. And he's probably having scans today. But the fact he's gone out there with the squad, flown out this, straight away, obviously, he's not on crutches or anything like that. So it's got to be a bit of a positive sign.
At the very least, it hints at clarity. Like, it might be dreadful news. It might be awful, but at least they know. And they have time to sort of work on what they do, which I guess is just throw your hands up in the air and Ethan Ranieri just pray for his ongoing fitness and form. I mean, we haven't talked too much about deadline day, but the fact that no one came in at all.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't look at it as deadline day. I look at it as the month. It should have been something at the start of the month. By the time deadline day came around, it was just the damage had been done in the rest of the month. Obviously, I think they probably opted with about a week to go. All eggs were in the Watkins basket, and then when that proved impossible, then they were just like, well, there's nothing else, and they've just left themselves so short. You knew someone was going to get injured yesterday in attack, didn't you? It was just so blatantly obvious that someone was going to go down, because that's the way football works and the way Arsenal's season's gone. The luck they've had with injuries, you just knew it was going to happen. It was just not a surprise.
I mean, Martinelli's, that's the thing. He's already got, in sort of 22 games, he's already at well over nearly 1,500 minutes, and so many of them have come lately because he was in and out of the team in those early months. And that's what happens then. Your hamstring goes. And I think the real frustration is, and you could tell it's a frustration shared by Arteta, is the 3 or 4 or 5 left standing have just been run into the ground. I thought it was so indicative of what Arsenal had got wrong in the window that Kai Havertz couldn't even come off the pitch when the game was lost and he's your only centre forward. And they were just like, well, who we bring? I was really like, do you want to just bring Tierney on at left wing and shunt Sterling up front? So anything that, like, kind of to bring it back to Dubai, God, these guys just need a break and a rest. But I promise you, when the international break comes around and they've played those 7 games in, I think it's 26 days. I mean, it's 7 days and 7 games in like the course of a month, a hectic month. They're going to need another trip to Dubai, and there won't be another trip to Dubai. So, yeah. I mean, I know I've gone a little bit off topic here, but I really feel like Arteta has been failed by upper management there.
Well, it's interesting. Just got a question here, sort of on that before you finish. You see, Casey Run says, some mixed messages regarding the window. We keep hearing the line that the manager and the players wanted a forward to come in, yet it was the same manager who said he wouldn't sign players he didn't feel worthy. For now, the board put the cash up as best as I can tell for Watkins, so it was actually Mikel who did not choose to bring anyone in. Thoughts? See, I don't think that's the case. Mikel, no. There's no way on earth Mikel was sitting there thinking, no, I'm not going to, Mikel wanted Ollie Watkins. That's very, very clear. I think the issue there was when there was potential for him to be available, Arsenal were just not keen on the price tag. Yeah. And that's not Mikel. Mikel wouldn't have cared. I honestly don't. Mikel would have paid the money. I'm absolutely convinced. And I don't know this for fact. No one's told me it information-wise. But no one will ever be able to convince me that, given what's gone on this season, how light Arsenal are in attack, that Mikel would have cared about an extra 10, 15 million pound for Ollie Watkins. He would have been like, just give them to me now. It's clearly the club decided. And it's the club's money, isn't it? It's not Mikel's money. And I suppose you can point to, they'll be looking at the summer and thinking, well, you got your way of signing Calafiori and Marino in the summer, and what have they contributed really this season? They're not even starting at the moment in the biggest of games, so maybe they'd point to that. But in terms of this window and right now and what they need in an attack, is, for me, there's no way it was to do with Arteta that they didn't sign Watkins. It was to do with the club not matching Villa's valuation.
You're so right. And then when that falls apart and Sesko's not available, there seems to be an attitude from the club, not Arteta, of sort of, we don't just want a warm body. We don't just need bodies. That's exactly what you need. Of course, you try to find the player that you wanted to bring in the summer anyway, and you try to do a deal for Benjamin Sesko, and you know, Ollie Watkins is a great market opportunity. You explore that, and then if you get to January the 28th and you've not got those deals you want to do, you have a cold hard look at your squad and say, "There's 4 or 5 forwards here. We need another player. We just need someone that can." You know, the example I wrote about this, and the example I had was Joselu at Real Madrid. They spent sort of 3 million on the guy. He had a good record, but he's obviously only going to last 18 months at most. I think it was 18 months they had him for. And you were never going to start Joselu in the biggest games, but you might start him against the La Liga equivalent of Leicester at home, and you would certainly bring him on if you were 2-0 up or 2-0 down for the last 10 minutes. I know they were linked with Morata, weren't they? I think that's an absolutely prime example of someone that would have been totally useful. And yeah, you know, not everyone in the squad needs to have the sort of ceiling of a superstar. If you can find players that are willing to, and when you're as good as Arsenal, you can find players that are willing to come and sit on your bench at 32, 33 years of age, hang around for 6 months, and be fairly useful when called upon. You get one of them, and you take a flyer that it might end up being another Sterling because it's a body. It's ludicrous when it's suggested that Arsenal didn't need warm bodies. It's absolutely stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree. I mean, they've definitely left themselves short. They definitely should have been able to do something. And even if it is sort of tying yourself into an 18-month contract with an aging player, then so be it. Because you can't go into the second half of the season with the options Arsenal have got in attack. It's just you're just setting yourself up for such a painful few months, and you're setting the players. It's basically, and I said this, it's really, really unfair on Kai Havertz. First of all, like really unfair. It's almost putting him. Well, it is putting him at risk. It's not almost putting him at risk. It is putting him at risk. You know, he's played so much football. He looks absolutely shattered at the moment, like properly shattered. And Mikel can sit there and say that, you know, genetically he's a powerhouse or whatever he called him. But still, that there comes a point when even a powerhouse will break down because of the sheer amount of minutes. And it just feels like we're getting there with Kai Havertz right now. So I feel like he's been let down, and the rest of the squad. You've got Declan Rice basically sitting in front of the camera or standing in front of the camera saying, "Yeah, I looked across and saw we had Kieran Tierney coming on left wing. I think we definitely need someone." You know, when you've got players saying that and calling out, they must have come in on February the 2nd, February the 4th, whatever it was, and looked around and just thought, "My God, we're really short here." You know, they must think it as well. And so they've definitely left themselves short. It's a massive gamble. And, you know, within one game, you've already lost another attacker. So,
can I tell you how bad I got? When I saw Fulham were signing Willian as a free agent, I thought I wouldn't be totally averse to chucking some money his way.
Yeah,
that's how bad it got.
I'm not going that far, mate. I'm not going that far. But he's and that's not you know, Willian's a good player and he'll do well at Fulham. I'm sure he was, and he did do well at Fulham before, but. No, it's too much scar tissue there. I mean, we're not revisiting that again. But there are those sort of players, you know, who aren't Willian, who don't have that emotional sort of scar tissue with a club that surely was there. You know, I look at Kolo Muani. I still feel like he was a really missed opportunity earlier on in the season. He's done well since he started off at Juventus as well. You know, I'm not surprised maybe about the Matisse Tell one that was something they never really considered. Just because they're probably looking at it and think, well, you know, he's more of they see him as a left-sided player. We've already got a couple of those already. They were much more around sort of forward. It'd have been interesting if the Morata stuff had actually gone further down the line. The reaction to Arsenal signing Morata would have been quite interesting. It wouldn't have gone down very well. But like you pointed out, maybe he could have been that Joselu type player who, yes, he's not playing every single game, but maybe he could have come on and contributed and eased the pressure on Havertz and taken some of the minutes away. Yeah, they've gambled massively. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Right, let's go on to a couple of other ones. We've done this one, haven't we? This is interesting. Nostradamus, 13 corners last night. Bit worried we aren't scoring from them as consistently as before. It's something I've noticed in the last few games. Do you think that's just? I mean, obviously there's no Bukayo Saka, which I think is a massive thing. When Arsenal were at their best at the corners, you had Rice doing it at one side, Saka doing it on the other side, and you know the delivery was so good. You know, everyone talked about Gabriel and his ability to attack the ball, but it was the delivery that was so good. And obviously losing Saka has taken a lot of that away. And Rice was pretty poor. I thought yesterday he was overhitting them a lot. So I don't. Do you think it's a case of teams have sort of worked Arsenal out a bit, or do you think it's more of a case of they were just on that unbelievable. Things have just evened out a little bit, and it's just sort of reverted back to norm slightly, given and the fact that Saka's not there.
I mean, I do think, like you say, things have sort of reverted back to normal. I'm also just looking. I think to an extent, teams have got very wise and very cautious about giving up corners. I'm looking at the numbers here, which is why I might sort of look a bit weird on screen. But see, in the Premier League, at least, you have to go back to that win over Man United in early December for the last time Arsenal scored a goal off a corner. The last 3 games, they've had 0.04
North London Derby. North London Derby, they scored, didn't it? It was an own goal. It went down to a Solanke own goal, didn't it? But that was
true. Yeah.
And they did miss some sitters. Like yesterday, Lewis Skelly should have scored from a corner yesterday, shouldn't he? At the end, that was he somehow put that over. And in the first leg, was it Timber missed a sitter? Gabriel's missed a couple of sitters that you wouldn't expect him to miss recently as well from corners. So I think finishing as well is a part of it.
Exactly, and to me, that's just variance. Really, that'll come and go. I mean, actually, if you kind of throw in some of the sort of expected assist numbers from this, you end up really high. Like that chance that Lewis Skelly missed is a prime opportunity by the standards of headed opportunities off corners. I mean, we all know and we all say headers just aren't as easy to score as you think they are. So there's also what was amazing. Did you see the stats that came up on screen about how good Newcastle are at defending corners?
Well, they've only conceded 1 goal all season from corners, haven't they?
Yeah. To an extent, who was I saying this to? I can't remember who I was saying this to, but I do wonder, like, the extent to which, like, the genius of Nicolas Jova has really been to sort of establish to footballers that if you go and stand behind someone, they can't see you. It's sort of very hard to defend against, but like it's reliant on so many things going right. And like you say, Declan Rice needs to be informed. Saka needs to be informed on the other end. Odegaard took a few good ones, but I don't think he's sort of Saka level with his delivery. It's why most teams don't score many goals from corners. At the moment, though, I think it's just finishing variance. The chances are still coming to Big Gabby, coming to other guys, and wouldn't surprise me at all if there's maybe even another routine come. What's the first game back? Leicester, did you say?
Leicester, yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee you there'll be a new routine there that Nicholas will have cooked up. Still the 4 guys at the back, but they'll do something fun or weird with it, I'm sure.
Right, one more before my kids come charging in back from school. So I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly before they do that. And this is one from brother Jeffro, who talks about sort of pressure on Arteta. It says Wenger's longest stint without a final was 3 years. Mikel's already gone 4 now, and spending much more. I always think the spending much more. It seems to be banded around with Arsenal, but it's like at the same time, so many other clubs have spent that amount of money as well. It's not, it's just kind of what you have to spend now to stay competitive. So I'm not sure that's. I always think that when people talk
it's all like demanding that milk should be better because it costs more. It just costs more.
It's like you have to spend that money to stay competitive and stay where you are at least at the moment. And obviously Arsenal at the moment, they have been the second best team in the country for the last few years. And the other teams around them have spent plenty. But in terms of sort of pressure, should there be more pressure on Arteta? It's definitely building. I think certainly the fan base, you can see it, you can feel it more. Not so much in the stadium at the moment, but certainly online. I know it's tough to sort of separate the two and everything like that, and it hasn't really morphed into the stadium yet. Although you do hear voices, obviously. But what do you think about pressure on Arteta and when it really will start to ramp up? It's looking unlikely, not beyond the realms of possibility, but looking unlikely there'll be a trophy this season. It kind of feels like Champions League or bust, doesn't it? So. And Arsenal have never won that in their history, so it's a big ask for them to do it this season. Not saying they won't, but if they do finish trophyless now, what do you think the sort of mood is going to be going into the side? There's an awful lot of pressure on the summer now, isn't there? And we say that most summers, but this summer particularly, I think there's an awful lot of pressure on Arsenal. Have to go big and get it right this summer because of their lack of activity in the last couple.
Brother, and I mean brother Joffrey. We're pronouncing that Joffrey, which would explain why the question I think is so mad. I don't understand it. There are 3 teams in the Premier League, I think, that have had an injury crisis. At least 3 of the top teams that have had an injury crisis like Arsenal's. One is Man City, and they've just had to splurge 200 million on pretty ordinary players, except for Marmoush, maybe Gonzalez. I don't really know. And the other's Tottenham, and we joke about whether or not they'll get relegated. And Arsenal, having lost Saka, having lost Ødegaard, having lost Ben White, having had a shadow of Declan Rice for half a season. Who am I missing? Gabriel Jesus as well. Injuries to Martinelli. They're second in the Premier League. I think, if anything, Mikel Arteta should be, his standing with Arsenal fans should be enhanced by what's happened this season, not diminished. Cup football is random. It's full of variables. The fact that Wenger got to some finals 3 years ago, and didn't win them was often because there were favourable draws. I don't feel like Arsenal have very often got the luck of the draw. I know that when you get to a semi-final, that doesn't count, but they keep drawing big teams in the FA Cup third round, and of course you should try and beat them, but those games are much more random. What this season has taught me is that, exactly like you say, you need to back Mikel Arteta in the transfer market, because even with this diminished form of Arsenal, they're in a title race. They were top 3 in the Champions League. If you surrounded Bukayo Saka and Martin Ødegaard with an even better striker, and we know it's not entirely a realistic proposition, but Stan Kroenke and whoever succeeds Edu and everyone, just work out if you can do Alexander Isak. If you go and do those deals, what's stopping you? We know where Arsenal are and what's missing, and I don't feel like the problem at this team at all is the manager. It's the fact that this season they've not had the players available, and at the top of the pitch they do need to invest more. I don't think that's an Arteta failing. I think the club have failed in the summer. Yeah, they need to back them. They need to back one of the best managers in the world, not even think about what his future should be, because his future should be at Arsenal right now.
Yeah, I don't really think they would even think about where his future should be. I think they absolutely would.
I think fans are, and I don't think fans should.
Are, yeah. But I think it comes with what's gone on the last few years. I think he's raised expectations, isn't it? It's very hard once you've raised expectations. It's very hard not to for people to sort of demand those expectations continue to raise. And when you're Arsenal and you're constantly second at the moment, there's only one place you can go, and if you don't finish first, then it's considered a failure. So I think he's a victim of that in a way. And there'll be no one wants to win more from my limited dealings with Mikel Arteta, from how we see him week in, week out and stuff like that. There is no one who wants to win more than Mikel Arteta, no doubt about that.
And he wouldn't tolerate the excuses I've just trotted out either.
I've just said, he never brings those up either. Yeah, he never brings those up either. But he has, you're right to point out that this season you can't not factor in what Arsenal have gone through this season. A lot of things have gone wrong for Arsenal, but then you can also trace back to, they got the summer spectacularly wrong in terms of the transfer market, and I think they did as well. It's clear they left themselves short. We said it at the time, and it's it's even shorter now, which is remarkable, really. But they did leave themselves short, and it was another summer where they failed to address the attacking areas and to really bolster where was needed to give themselves more of a threat, and that just simply has to happen this summer. It has to happen, and the club must accept that, and will accept that. It would. I'll be stunned if 2 big signings don't happen this summer in terms of the attack. It just has to happen. But in terms of pressure, look, he will be under pressure, but I don't think that pressure. I think mainly that pressure will be external rather than internal.
Yeah,
and I think that's it.
Not
for
much
today,
to add
mate.
to that.
No, I think that's it. I think we'll take a break, not to Dubai, but we'll have a bit of a rest for the next week or so, and come back firing on all cylinders ahead of Leicester next weekend. What are your plans for the weekend? You got anything? You doing any? You're not going to Dubai, are you?
No, I might go to Leyton Orient. Waiting to hear on accreditation for that one. I suspect it'll be a no, because League 2 press box for the biggest story in English football, Man City. Might do that, might do City, Real Madrid as well. Some big games coming up. They just don't involve Arsenal.
Big games indeed. But it's nice to not be involved in them. Well, not the FA Cup, but it's nice not to be involved in the Champions League. Anyway, we can sit back and just watch it and enjoy the fact that we're already safely through. But yeah, it would be nice. As much as I'm sure the players and everyone are loving Dubai, or will be loving Dubai. It would be nice if we were involved in the FA Cup, and we should be. That Man United game is going to annoy me for a long time. But look, thanks for joining me, mate. As always, we'll be back, like I said, everyone, next week, probably on Thursday, I imagine, as usual, to start to really preview that Leicester game and Arsenal's return to action. I'll be back in the morning to do the usual show all over again. You want to get involved in that? Any questions, comments, as usual, please do get down into the comments. I'll pull some of them together and get them included in that. Until then, have a good time, mate. Enjoy wherever it is you end up at the weekend, and I'll catch you soon.
Bye-bye.